Welcome everyone to Train Tuesday. We are back live this week for what we're going to be talking about. Well, we're going to be talking about Athearn HO tonight, and we're going to be talking specifically about GP50s and some early trailer on flat cars. So stay tuned for that. Let's see who's joining us here tonight. I'm looking on my screen. I see UP8518 Productions, Ron, Delta 9, NZR 1543 from Down Under. I see Sid. I see DG Model Works is in the house. And let's see, they're going quickly. Jason, George, Abel, the Memphis Railroader. Sounds like a jazz band. King Trump 2024, Steven, and Derek, and Donnie, and Austin, and Jackie, and Glenn Power, Williams, just to name a few. Thank you for joining me tonight. We've got some great stuff to talk about tonight. We're going to be talking about the Athearn HO GP50s. And of course, we're going to be talking about the Athearn HO 85-foot TOFCs. So if you're modeling the 60s and 70s, you're going to want to check that out. If you're modeling the 80s to the present day, you're going to want to check out the GP50s. Now, if you are joining me live tonight, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to watch us. If you are catching us later on our YouTube channel and you like this kind of content, be sure to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell. That way you're notified every time a new video such as this drops into our catalog of YouTube. So with that being said, let's do one more round of shout outs and get into this model train goodness. I see Furnace Valley Model Railroad has arrived. And John Robert Fox, Robin Bradley, just to name a few. And who else is joining us here? Landon and Austin and P. Waco, J.D. Boyd, Robert, and another Jackie. So there we have it. A pretty good crowd tonight. Thank you for joining us. Let's get started with the Athearn GP50s. This is the Athearn line. This is HO, and this isn't Genesis. Keep that in mind. We do have a Genesis GP50, but this month we're going to be talking about the Athearn. So a little bit of background on this model. The EMD GP50 is a 4-axle diesel road switcher locomotive that was built by General Motors Electromotive Division between 1980 and 1985. It is powered by a 16-cylinder EMD 645 F3B diesel engine, and it can produce between 3,500 and 3,600 horsepower. Now, a total of 278 examples of this locomotive were built, and the GP50 retains the same overall length of 59 feet 2 inches as the other GP-2 series locomotives built within that same era. It utilized GM's D87 traction motor, enabling it to produce a starting tractive effort of 65,000 pounds with a continuous rating of 62,400 pounds. The most significant difference in the GP50 from earlier designs, like the GP40, was the upgraded components such as a turbocharger silencer and a new type of blower housing. This increased the horsepower, of course. And then the locomotive also introduced a new anti-wheel slip technology where the locomotive horsepower output was reduced if wheel slip condition was introduced. It also featured features such as it also featured features common to earlier models, such as the dynamic braking and an airtight hood that kept out dust, dirt, and other particles from reaching internal components. All the companies that purchased the GP50 have now been absorbed into other systems. However, a few of their successors continue to operate these units. Now, a number of these GP50s have been rebuilt for better fuel economy and continue in service today. We'll see that in our BNSF example coming up shortly. Now, the one that you see on your screen now, this is one that we offered a few years back. It's been a little bit. This is a FURX lease unit 2949. You probably won't see this on hobby shop shelves anymore, but should you want to find this maybe in a online auction site, the part number for this is ATH 7780870. So again, the part number ATH 77870. Now that, like I said, that's from a previous release from a few years back. Let's talk about what we're offering for the month of November. And keep in mind, you have until Friday the 24th to place your pre-orders on these models here. So let's just start with a somewhat modern locomotive. Let's start with BNSF. This is mid-2010s. Now, several BNSF units were derated and reclassified as GP25s or as GP25-2s. This was performed by BNSF between 2006 and 2010, and they were derated from their 3,500 horsepower down to 2,500 horsepower. You'll sometimes see these in yards as a switcher style locomotive, or you can sometimes see them in branch line service. The locomotive that you see here, this is 3110, is just one of the 3 locomotives that we're offering in this run. We're also going to offer 3118 and 3146. Now, the features specific to the BNSF locomotives is if you get the economy version, you will have the operating beacon on the cab roof. You'll also have the front pilot plow, and this, for the first time on these models, front and rear operating ditch lights. They'll also feature the K3 LA horn on bracket and the RV style air conditioners that these are known for. Now, going back to the 1980s and where some of these locomotives came from, Santa Fe. This is mid 1980s. The Santa Fe ordered 45 GP50s from EMD, road numbers 3810 to 3854. Most of these locomotives were later part of the BNSF roster, apart from road number 3854, which had been wrecked and subsequently retired. Now here we have unit number 3847. You also have the opportunity to add 3849 and 3853 to your roster. Features specific to the Santa Fe units. Again, if you get the economy version, you're going to have the operating beacon that you see on the rooftop there. Standard features will include the Leslie RS3L horn, the front pilot plow, and the vapor style AC conditioner that you see on the cab. So we've got some Cascade Green for you, and this is an exciting era if you're a BN fan. We're talking mid-1990s. There was a total of 63 units for the Burlington Northerns. In fact, Burlington Northern had one of the largest orders of the GP50s, second only to the Southern Railway. 3100 to 3109 were ordered by the Frisco Railway. However, they were delivered to the Burlington Northern. 3100 was the only one that received the Frisco colors, although it did have a Burlington Northern number. Now, the Locomotive Analysis and Reporting System, or LARS for short, this system was installed on units number 3108 all the way to 3157. That was something specifically Burlington Northern had been experimenting with. Something else that Burlington Northern was experimenting with, we'll talk about in a minute when we get to the features. Now, of course, this is the whiteface era. Personally, one of my favorite paint schemes of the Burlington Northern. This is number 3117. We're also going to offer road numbers 3132 and 3141, and features specific for the Burlington Northern units. Anything that's going to have a lighting feature is going to be included with the economy version. So you're going to have operating strobe style ditch lights that work with the economy. Now you're probably wondering, what's the strobe effect? Well, back in the 1990s, Burlington Northern had experimented with some lighting projects to help reduce grade crossing accidents. If you remember, we released the SD60Ms a couple of years ago with the same feature. So when the horn is depressed, the ditch lights blink in a strobe effect, much like a camera. Now, they don't alternately flash like on a CSX or a Norfolk Southern unit. This is in the very early days of the 90s, and ditch lights were not standard at this time. What they would do is when the horn was depressed in the Burlington Northern cab, those lights would just randomly flash. And so that's what these are going to do. That's based on the prototype. So keep that in mind so that when you get this locomotive down the road, there's nothing wrong with your locomotive. It's actually programmed per the prototype. These are also going to have the Leslie RS3L horn on the long hood and a front pilot plow. Now, another one that's caused a little bit of debate on our social media is the Central Railroad of Indiana. These are former Burlington Northern units. Now, the Central Railroad Company of Indiana is a Class 3 short line railroad that owns 92 miles of track between Cincinnati, Ohio, and Shelbyville. With trackage rights on CSX to Indianapolis, Indiana, the CIND interchanges with CSX, Indiana and Ohio Railway, and Norfolk Southern in Cincinnati, and in North Bend, Ohio, with CSX and Indiana and Ohio branch line splits from the CIND line at Valley Junction, a railroad location near Hooven, Ohio. A little bit of background on that railroad. So, as I was saying, these were former Burlington Northern units. From the time that the Central Railroad of Indiana got them, there were some changes, mostly to the dynamic brake setup and blister. So there's some subtle design changes that happened to these from the Burlington Northern. Now keep in mind, these are not Genesis models. So we're not always going to have all of those small, minute details that you would be associated with a Genesis unit. However, since this is the first time we're offering these locomotives with factory installed speakers, as well as lighting features that have never been offered before, we wanted to offer the fan of the Athearn class models these locomotives for the Central Railroad of Indiana. And as such, we're offering 3 different road numbers. Road number here is 5000. In the prototype world, this was a former Burlington Northern, former Frisco unit. And then the other 2 former Burlington Northern units, number 5003 and 5008, will also be offered. Features that can be found on the Central Railroad of Indiana locomotives are the operating beacon on the cab roof, again, if you get the economy version, front and rear operating ditch lights, front pilot plow, and K3LA horn on bracket. So kind of neat. We've got a little bit of everything here for you so far. We've got the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, and we've got short line as well as class 1s. Let's finish up the GP50s with another class 1 and a flight of fancy. So coming up next is the Union Pacific. Now, while the GP50 was not originally ordered by the Union Pacific, it did end up adding this locomotive to its roster thanks to the inclusion of the Mopac units in 1982 and then later the Chicago Northwestern. Here we've got unit number 962, and we're also going to offer units number 977 and 985. Now, features on these locomotives is they are going to have a Leslie RS3L horn. They're all based on former Missouri Pacific locomotives, so they're non-dynamic, and they have a front pilot plow. Now, a lot of you are seeing 1990s and screaming at me saying, why are there no ditch lights on this locomotive? Well, this is early to mid-90s, so keep in mind, it wasn't until after the mid-90s we started seeing more and more ditch lights. Also, you're not going to see a yellow stripe on this. We're still in the red sill era. We're going to have to wait till about 2006 before we see yellow stripes on the sill. Now, coming up next comes with its own trigger warning for the prototype modelers. Again, if it's not your thing, just move on. We've got plenty of other things in the Genesis line this month for you. But, we thought, hey, you know what? In the mid-1980s, Conrail had the SD50s. Why not introduce the 4-axle version to the fleet? So this, again, this is not based on anything but the legendary liveries that we offer from time to time. Now, a lot of you guys out there in social media have taken to the social media page and told us we're ridiculous for doing these because it takes away time from other projects. And really, it's not true. Actually, Janik did a great job of explaining that on social media today by saying that the work stream that these two, the work streams are in different locations. New products, new road names, things of that nature. That's a different work stream than actually adding paint schemes to locomotives. So really, this doesn't take a lot of time away from a developer to put a legendary livery paint scheme on a locomotive. And a lot of other people have been saying, well, that's all Athearn does is legendary liveries. And I need only point to you the SD70 ACUs that we worked very closely with Canadian Pacific with. So keep in mind, this is the only legendary livery locomotive out of all of the other ones that are based on a prototype. So we're going to keep offering them because people keep buying them. And there's a certain segment out there that just love them. So we're going to keep doing it. This is unit number 4500. We're also going to offer 4505 and 4507. Another interesting program note is the researcher that worked on this particular locomotive has updated the artwork. As you can see here, it's got a black sill. It's now been updated and the artwork's been sent to the factory. We'll have a blue sill. Yes, we do read the comments and the social media world, so keep that in mind. We are watching. This is also going to include the Leslie RS3L horn as well as a front pilot plow. Now let's go back to the model so we can see all that goodness, and let's talk about some of the features that are going to be included with this model. So as I was alluding to earlier, this is the first time with operating ditch lights and or strobes. They are also going to be sound ready, so the speakers are going to be factory installed. So since these have a 21 pin DCC ready setup, you can simply just select the decoder, sound decoder of your choice, install, and it's basically plug and play. No need to worry about speakers, they're already installed. Again, going back to the lighting features, it's the first time we've offered them with ditch lights and or strobes. Now keep in mind that is dependent on the prototype. If the prototype, as we show it in our artwork, doesn't have ditch lights, don't expect ditch lights to be there. However, if there are in the artwork either ditch lights or a strobe of some type, and you buy the economy version, you will have that lighting feature ready to go. They're also going to have an individually applied wire formed grab iron, so that's a nice feature. 5-pole motor with precision machined flywheels, multi-link drive trained for trouble-free operation. These are DCC ready with a 21-pin NEM plug, and of course LED illumination throughout. All-wheel drive with precision gears for smooth and quiet operation. All-wheel electrical pickup, heavy die-cast frame, and again, DCC ready. So you can get the economy version or the DCC ready with the speakers already installed. Minimum radius on these guys, even though they're a little bit, they seem big, they're not. Minimum radius on this is 18 inches. However, we always recommend 22. These are still a scale locomotive. Not as much detail as a Genesis unit, but they're going to still have the overall correct prototype specifications. So pricing on these guys, again, this is MSRP, so you need to talk to your dealer. But if you go with the DCC ready with the speakers already installed but no decoder installed, they're $149.99. If you want to go with the economy, they're $219.99. And again, you've got till Friday the 24th to place your pre-orders on the GP50s. So with that, let's see if anybody's got any questions on the GP50s. I'll take 1 or 2 questions and then we'll move right on to our next item. William Fomer, who never disappoints in the comment section on social media. Yeah, well, somebody complained about it, so we're going to go ahead and change it. So that's why. Austin has a question, please. Austin has a question. What is your question? If I see it in the next few minutes, I will try to answer it. Let's see. I see some people also asking for railroads that we didn't offer. So once again, you want to use the product suggestion email. It's athearn-productsuggestions@athearn.com, and that goes right to product development. Now, I did talk to a guy at a show recently, and he came to the booth and he's like, hey, thanks for offering that product suggestion email, but I'm mad. And he was furious, mainly because he didn't get a response. And when I tried to explain to him, I said, sir, this is basically where we ask for your input of what railroads, what projects, things of that nature. That goes right to our lead product developer. Now, those emails are read, and sometimes we will get back to you, but please don't think that we have somebody on staff that's waiting to reply to all those emails, because we literally get a lot of emails even after a Train Tuesday with new requests. Most of those requests, what they do is they get put into a file, and that way when we come out with a new locomotive and we want to pick out a new road name, if we see that 500 people have asked for, let's say, Burlington Northern on the next run of GP7s, then we're going to probably do those. So just keep in mind, it's a place for you to send your ideas for product suggestions. It's not a two-way conversation about new products. Austin, I think you were the one that I was kind of alluding to in our show tonight. What are the odds the send units in Genesis and SLSF, BN Paint, and ones will have correct dynamic brake housing and size fans? So excellent question. I know you were super disappointed. I think Janet got back to you on that. So we offered them in the Athearn just because Athearn is not going to be as detailed as the Genesis models. I think we know that. Keep in mind that Athearn is what Ready to Roll was a couple of years ago. Second of all, we could do them in Genesis. If I remember correctly, though, it's going to take some new tooling. So if we have enough requests for Central Indiana Railroad GP50s and maybe those different variants that you're talking about, because yes, I know now they're lettered for TP&W and so on, and we can justify the tooling costs to make those appropriate to fit the Genesis line, we'll probably offer them again. Now, when will we offer them? Honestly, I don't know. We've announced them over 2 years ago, and we've yet to deliver those. Those should be here. I think the last that I checked, the ETA is sometime early winter. So once those have been released, we'll probably start looking at new roads. So who knows? I mean, we are listening. We see you guys out there on social media. And if I'm not answering it, one of the guys at Athearn is. That's probably my best answer for you. A, if we get enough demand from folks like you, and B, if we can justify the tooling costs that need to be done to make those accurate for the road, the era, and the locomotives that you're wanting to put them in the Genesis line, then we'll go ahead and add those in a future run. Until then, we've given these locomotives out there for the guys that are maybe not quite as prototypically minded as you are, which is nothing wrong with that. All right. Any other questions? Hopefully I answered that question for you. No high hood units in Norfolk Southern. Not this time. I'm going to end off with Nick because it's a pertinent question. I want to answer it. Any updates on when ETAs for pre-orders will be added to the website again? I have zero updates for you, unfortunately. What I can tell you is that because of a software integration that happened through Horizon, our web team and our development team are working through many challenges right now that include that ETA that you're asking about. So they are working on resolving that. Now, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you want to look at it, not only do they have the Athearn website that they got to deal with, but all of the other brands associated with Horizon as well. So it's one web team that's working on multiple websites. And we're also in our busiest time of the year too, with the holidays coming up and such. So even though the web team hasn't given me a firm date on when those ETAs will be added back to our website, I think it's safe to say that we're going to probably wait until the first of the year. Until then, myself and other Athearn staff, we are monitoring the social media threads pretty closely, and I try to answer those questions when they come up. So if there's a specific locomotive that you want to know when your pre-order's coming in, and I see it out there in social media land, I will try to answer it for you. I know it's not the best thing, but we are watching. We want to, and I'm impatient too, so it's not a problem. All right, let's move on to the next item, and that is the 85-foot TOFCs. So the 85-foot flat car, it was introduced in the 1960s to accommodate the latest 40-foot trailers that were just being introduced to the nation's highways. Each flat car was set up for transport of 2 trailers. Subsequently, these dedicated TOFC, or trailer on flat cars, became the de facto standard for intermodal service during this era. And for this run, we're going to be talking specifically 1960s and 1970s. Now, we're going to start with the 1970s with the 3 models that you see on your screen now. The first one being 1970s era Santa Fe. This is car number 290507. We are also offering 2 additional road numbers for the Santa Fe, car numbers 290512 and 290522. Now, Sticking into the 1970s, we've got this trailer train in the mustard yellow that they adopted in the 1970s. This is trailer train number 474605. We're also going to include car numbers 474653 and 474677. Now, going back a little bit, we're going to the 1960s era trailer train back when they had the brown paint scheme. This is car number 473647. We'll also have car numbers 473650 and 473659. So we've got more cars for you into the 1960s. We've got about 4 more to talk about here quickly. Coming up first, we've got that Great Northern car. This is car number 61000. We're also going to offer car numbers 61007 and 61009. Next is the Southern Pacific, again, 1960s era. This is car number 513007. We'll also offer car numbers 513021 and 513025. Staying squarely into the 1960s, we've got the Sioux line. Here is car number 5577, and we'll also include car numbers 5583 and 5590. And then last, we have the Florida East Coast, again, 1960s era. This is car number 2001. We're also going to include 2 other cars for Florida East Coast. Those car numbers are 2007 and 2009. So the features for these cars, if you're not familiar with these are fully assembled. They're ready to go. You don't need to do anything. Maybe weather them to your liking, but they're going to have detailed trailer hitches. They're going to have factory installed wire grab irons. And they have a metal underframe for correct rail height and optimum performance. So not only do they look good, but they've got that weight, they've got that heft. Really nice when you start adding trailers on these. They're going to track really nicely. They have a swing mount coupler box that kind of helps negotiate those turns. And the minimum radius on these really is 22 inches. I wouldn't try anything less than that. 22 inches is pretty close. They're going to look a lot better on a 24-inch radius. Even though they're Athearn, they are scaled, so keep that in mind. They haven't been shortened or anything like that. Now, the MSRP on these cars, they're $44.99. Again, that's MSRP, so contact your dealer before Friday, November 24th. See what your price is and to lock in that pre-order so you don't miss out. All right, so that is the presentation for this Train Tuesday. I've got time to take a few questions, and then I'm going to let you guys get back to some modeling. Steven wants to know, I didn't see any dates on the rendering for the yellow TTX flat. Those are 1970s era. 1960s era TTX cars were typically a brown, oxide red brown color. By the 1970s, they changed their corporate look to a yellow, kind of a mustard yellow. Delta 9, I would agree, especially those Great Northern ones. Those are really good. Sid, is there finally a production sample of the Ohio Central and Wheeling and Lake Erie tunnel motors? Sid, I know you have been waiting forever, and Sid is a perfect example. I'm the same way. I'm waiting for certain Genesis and Athearn items to come in stock, and I'm like a kid on Christmas morning. I'm very impatient. Sid is kind of like me. He wants to know. Sid, I've got some good news. I just received from our photographer yesterday that there is a shipment of models coming in that need to be photographed, and I'm hoping that those models that you're looking for are part of it. You know what? As soon as I get those pictures done, I'm going to put something on social media for you. I know you're waiting for those. I can't wait to see how happy he is when he gets those units. It's one of the best feelings ever, is getting that phone call from the dealer saying, you know what? Those items you ordered, they're in stock. Let's see what other questions we have. Tom, when will the flat cars with the airplanes arrive? Ah, yes, the roundhouse flat cars with the airplanes. We announced those a couple of springs ago, if I remember right. Latest ETA I have on those would be probably late winter, early spring. If you're going to the Rocky Mountain Train Show, I might actually have some on display by then, but it's kind of far out a little bit. still. So, but that's roughly when we're thinking about getting those in. Frederick with a really interesting question. Excuse me. Which 85-foot flat car is good for the American Freedom Train? So that's a great question. One that I don't have off the top of my head. However, I do remember that they probably used some former Ringling Brothers, if I remember correctly. This is based on a book I read a number of years ago, and also some TTX flat cars. Now, for those who don't know, the American Freedom Train was a train that basically traveled throughout the United States from about 1975 to 1976, included 3 different locomotives. They were all steam powered, one of which was the beautiful GS4, the Southern Pacific Daylight 4449, as well as in my neck of the woods, the Reading T1. And they had passenger cars that have been outfitted with displays. One of the cool things that they had was a moving walkway so you could go through the displays. But the logistics side of the American Freedom Train was the flat cars that held trucks and vans and supplies and things of that nature. So on top of all the display equipment, they also had these flat cars that carried the support equipment. So best guess, Frederick, I'm going to say former Ringling Brothers as well as TTX, but there are some sources out there that you can find on the American Freedom Train that would give you a much more specific question. But great question. All right, 1 or 2 more questions, and I'm going to let you get back to it. Let's see. Absolutely right, Stephen. There was one earlier in 1947. It was pulled by a PA, an Elko PA. That one people don't really hear much about anymore, which is a shame. That was kind of the original. Charles Woods wants to know, hey, how about some auto racks and N scale? We actually have some in stock right now. They are based on the 1960s era, but they are definitely appropriate all the way into the 1970s. These are the ones that are not covered. They're open. However, the Southern prototype actually does have sides to it. But check your local Athearn dealer. There's still a few of those in stock from the ones that we announced about 2 years ago. There's a couple of different roads, CB&Q, I believe Penn Central's in there, as well as the Southern. Brad wants to know, when can we expect another run of Genesis AC 4400s to get announced? Also, are the first run finally coming soon? So yeah, great question. We're going to probably hold off on any more new announcements on the AC 4400s until we have the ones that are already been announced come in. There's 2 that we announced. The first run, originally we were saying late winter of 2024. We're trying to push to get those in before the end of the year. I can't guarantee it, but I do know that the Athearn team is working extremely hard to get that first run of AC 4400s in here before the end of the year. Hopefully we can make that happen because I'm just as impatient for those as anybody. The second run, we're hoping to get those out probably late spring, early summer. Again, kind of far out there, but that's our best estimate at this time. Let's see. I'm going to look for one more question. I'm going to go back a little bit since I've been talking and make sure I didn't miss anyone. Let's see. BN 1970, the GP50s are nice. I have 2 of the Genesis and Tiger Stripes on pre-order. 2 Genesis with sound. I need the budget for any idea when those are currently due. Yeah, I've got a rough estimate for you. Hopefully this will help. Start setting that money aside for those pre-orders. Probably, I'd say late winter, early spring. Again, those numbers are fluctuating all the time, but with our best communication with our factories, that's what we're looking at. So I hope that helps you a little bit on your budget. I totally get the budget thing. All right. Let's see. Thank you for all the kind comments. This is a labor of love for myself and the Athearn crew. We do like coming at you with the Train Tuesday. Now, keep in mind that in 2024, we're going to be doing some big changes as far as how Athearn does videos and live feeds. Starting in 2024, Train Tuesday will no longer be a live event. It'll be simply a drop-in program that will always drop every Tuesday on the YouTube channel. However, we are going to still continue to do live events. So be looking for more of a presence of the Athearn Extra going into 2024. Also, we're going to be breaking up the new announcements going forward to make it a little bit easier to share the information. And also, if you're only interested in one specific thing in the new announcements, you don't have to watch a whole video now for that whole announcement. You can just watch the video segment of your choosing. So we'll do a few more live Train Tuesdays until the end of the year. And then after that, live's going to pretty much go to the Athearn Extra. I'm going to finish with this one because the timing is perfect. Paul wants to know any new surveys coming soon. Yes, we are trying to get a survey out next week. I would like to put it out next Wednesday. It's a very pertinent survey. It's going to be asking you questions on everything about our website, the way we do pre-orders, the models that we selected. We want to hear from you because you're our valuable customers and we really do value what you say. We do realize that right now the website isn't working at its optimal best, I guess you could say. We are trying to get that corrected. But we want to have your thoughts on some other things as well. And as we go into the new year, which seems hard to believe, we're going to be going into 2024 in a few weeks. We want to make sure that we get the new year started on the right foot, and we want to include you in on that. So with that, thank you, Paul, for that question. Thank you, everyone else, for your questions. Yeah, once again, you have until Friday, November 24th to place your pre-orders. Until next time, everyone out there, have a great evening. Do some modeling and high greens. Take care, everyone.